everyone. Welcome to my show, which is called Coffee with Coaches. And I'm your host, Krista Molione. And today I am very honored to have a special guest with me who is Gordon Tredgold. And Gordon, there's so much that I can introduce about you. You are a published author. You are a leadership coach. You are really one of the veterans in leadership field. You've done so much. You just were recently nominated, I believe, as the Guru Top 30. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was number 25. I was blown away when that happened. When you see your name on a list that includes people like John Maxwell, Tony Robbins, Ken Blanchard, who's my leadership hero, Tom Peters, Jim Collins, it's kind of, you look at it and you think, seriously, how did I get on that list? But you know what? I'm taking it. I've been on quite a few of these now, and yeah, it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, you're very humble because you're very accomplished. You're also an international keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And you've just done so much. You're a Forbes coach as well.
Yeah.
Is that correct? It's wonderful. And you've been published everywhere. I mean, Gordon, you've got a huge social media following in addition to all your publications in print. And so I'm very honored to have you today to talk about your leadership coaching. I've been doing this series for a few weeks now, and the goal of this series is really to highlight special coaches like you who are legit top of the line coaches, but also to dispel maybe some of the myths and answer some questions that my viewers have about coaching.
Yeah.
So before we do the questions, I'd like to know how you got into coaching leadership.
So how did I get into coaching leadership? Well, I worked in IT for 25 years, leading projects, and what I found was that I was brilliant. I was probably the greatest ever. Not true. But there's a limit to how much I can do with my two hands. And as I started to go up the ranks to become a project manager and a program manager, my ability to influence outcome by my direct actions was limiting what could be achieved. So the best way to get more done was to teach people how I did it. So go and coach them in the things that worked. So that's kind of how I got into it, through a desire to get bigger results with more impact. And that was, then teaching people, understanding what worked, understanding how I did things, and then going and coaching and working with them to help them become better at what they do. Because if you've got a team of 10 people and you can improve their performance by 10% each, that's 100% improvement. If you can improve it by 20%, that's a 200% improvement. And that's significantly more than the impact I can directly have. So that's how I got into coaching. And then on the leadership side, what I found was that I was getting great results. And again, it was initially through my own actions, but once it got into the coaching, then it was more about leadership. And I learned what it was to be a good leader and the impact it could have. And then I started teaching people how to not do the job, but how to lead other people to do the job. And that's how I got into coaching. I did a lot of mentoring, working for companies. We had mentoring programs, and I would mentor 5 and 6 people. And I found that I had a way of explaining things to people in a way that resonated with them, like we talked about earlier, that would actually make it accessible to them. And then I thought, okay, I look at leadership. I don't like the way leadership's going. 85% of the employees are disengaged, so there's a huge opportunity there. Let me write and speak and talk and teach people leadership.
This is wonderful. And so you've been doing this for quite a while. What are the most common mistakes leaders make? I know that's a big loaded question.
So, the mistakes that leaders make is that we can be quite judgmental. So the first mistake we make is we think it's about us, and we want to be the ones that has the hands-on. But then when you do that, you're limiting it. It's limiting the output. So we've got to see that it's not about us, it's about our team. It's about putting our team in a position where they can be successful. But quite often we're judgmental of people, and we make decisions of whether they can or can't do it. And once we've decided they can't do it, then we focus on that top 20% of the employees that can, which then disengages the other 80%. So we have to take a much more inclusive, an abundance mentality rather than a scarcity mentality. But that's difficult to do because of our a lot of our belief system, and it doesn't just apply to our teams; it applies to ourselves. So I've written 3 books. My last book was in the final 5 for Management Book of the Year. I've written for Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, translated into 20 languages. I get great feedback on my writing, but 6 years ago, I had never written a thing because I was convinced I couldn't write. And that mindset of I can't write, I can't do any better was absolutely blocking me. And yet in 2 years, I went from unknown to top 100 leadership expert in the world. Well, how was that possible? It was because I redid my mindset. I didn't think I would be the greatest, but what I did was I thought, you know what? I'll give it a try. I went with possibility. I went with growth mindset. And as leaders, this is what we need to do with our teams. And if we assume that everybody has the potential to be our best ever employee, we will improve them. Now, they might not go on to be the best ever, but if we can get a 10, 20, 50% improvement out of everybody, boom, now we're cooking with gas. And I think that's the mistake that leaders make. They feel it's too much about them. They have preconceived ideas about who's good, who's bad, and that they need to focus on the better people rather than coaching and creating belief in teams. Because when we can create belief, an engaged team that believes in itself will move mountains. So in terms of coaching, I do the leadership, I do exec coaching, but I also coach in other things because I'm a problem solver and I'm great at creating belief. I've just worked with a client now who's in the same field. She works in employee engagement. And 2.5 weeks ago, we were chatting and she said to me, I'd love to be a keynote speaker, but I don't have a topic. I'd love to be an author, but I don't have a topic. Mm-hmm. Today, she finished recording a 40-minute keynote speech. Because I worked with her, I showed her what she knew, I gave her the belief that she could do this. We came up with a system that completely resonated with who she is and how she works, that now, she's now going to do a talk next Wednesday. 3 weeks ago, if you'd have said to her, oh, by the way, you'll be giving a personalized keynote speech, which is authentic, aligned to your values, and it's going to add value to your audience, she would have said, hell no. But in 3 weeks, from not thinking to doing, is what she's done. And that's because I worked with her. I worked on belief. I worked with her aligning what she was good at with what she wanted to do. And when you create this synergy of belief, desire, and capability, you can get amazing results. And quite often, the connection between those is broken. And one of my favorite leadership quotes comes from John Quincy Adams, and that is, if you can inspire people to do more, be more, want more, be more, then you're a leader. And this is what we have to do. Create that belief, build that momentum, and then get everybody productive and generating great results. And as you can see, I'm a little bit passionate about it.
You definitely are. Do you believe that capability is always tied into performance? So sometimes I hear leadership, they say, well, they're just not in the right role. But it sounds like your belief is more the mindset focus about what they can and cannot do. So if they've been hired for their capabilities and that yet they're underperforming,
So the thing about mindset, I'm a little bit pro and anti mindset because um, with some of the big coaches, what they will tell you is, um, we need to change your mindset. We need to get you into a feeling of can do, will do. And you know what? Let's walk over burning coals and let's see what you can do. And come on, you can do it.
Right.
That, for me, that's hollow motivation. And you might get me to move a little bit, but how is that sustainable unless you're stood behind me, shouting at me all the time? The way I like to change mindset is through simplicity of plans, creating plans that believe in. What I want you to do is I want you to perform at your peak in my absence. So I can't be all chest beating, you can do it, because if I'm not there, where does that come from? Where does that belief come from? So I look at doing it by, giving people examples of others that have done the thing that they've done. I try to help them create a plan that they can believe in. For example, I coached a woman. I only coached her for 90 minutes on writing a book. And I said to her, I help people get clarity. So you want you to write a book? How big's your book? I don't know. Okay. How will you know when you're finished? How will you know when you're halfway through? How will you know to give yourself a pat on the back because you're making good progress? And she said, I don't. I went, okay, let's fix that. And I picked up 3 books. This is 25,000 words. This is 40. This is 70,000. What size book were you thinking of writing? And she said, 40,000 word book. I went, great. Now we know when we get to 40,000 words, we're done. So we can see the finish line. And I said to her, how many words a day do you think you can write in an hour? And she said, I don't know, 1,000. I was like, great. So if you just do this an hour a day for 40 days, you're done.
You're done. Wow.
But what about the editing? Not your job. That's an editor's job. You're a writer. What about the graphic design? Not your job. You're the writer. Your job is to spend an hour a day for the next 40 days. And if you do that, because you've got all the content inside you, and I worked with her to create a structure for the book, but once she had that picture of what it looked like, and she knew that if she wrote for an hour a day, she'd be at 40,000 words. And I even told her another trick, which is, we're doing this podcast now. I did a podcast series for a while, and I got them transcribed. And a 1-hour podcast is 12 to 15,000 words. So if you're going to write a 40,000 word book, all you need to do is talk for 4 hours.
That's good. We'll make this into a leadership series, Gordon. You've given me a new idea.
but now, you see, now I've changed their mindset, and I haven't done it by going, you're the greatest, you're the best. I've said to her, look, these are some simple steps you can take. And if you know it's 1,000 words a day, at the end, we knew she was going to have 10 chapters, so 4,000 words a chapter. So every 4 days, you're going to get a chapter done. So at the end of every chapter, a pat on the back, little glass of wine, celebrate, and then get on to the next chapter. I coached her for 90 minutes. We did not have another session. I messaged her on Facebook, just saying, so how's it going? And she was like, it's going great. I mean, we actually had a 2-hour session and she cancelled after 90 minutes because she wanted to go home and get started. And
wow.
and 40 days later, she had her first draft done. So I've created belief, not by rah and walk over calls. And she did that in my absence by me working with her, creating a plan that she believed in, that resonated with what she wanted to do. And now I've just wound her up, put her on the track, boom, off she goes. So for me, this is what leadership's about. If you can do that with 20 people, imagine the output. Imagine the output you can get.
You've just dropped so many bombs of wisdom in a few words there, because you've made it clear that, number one, leadership should happen in the leader's absence. So if you're setting up the employee to feel like their performance is only contingent on the leader's presence, that's micromanagement, right? That's not leadership.
No, I don't see it as micromanagement. I understand where you're going with that, and micromanagement is bad. It's actually worse than micromanagement. It creates dependency. If I'm not there, you won't succeed. And one of the things that really made me feel about that was, you know, I did a degree in mathematics, and I did one subject. I can't remember what the name it was, but whenever the teacher was within eyesight, line of sight, I understood everything about the subject. As soon as I left that room, I had no clue what it was we were talking about. And yeah, he was the one that gave me the confidence and the. But as soon as he wasn't there, I started to struggle, and it was some experiences like that that I thought, you know, when I coach people, I don't want them. You know, they're free to give me a call and say, hey, how do I deal with this? But I want to give them everything they need so they can do it in my absence. And when we do that, do you know what we've done? We have truly empowered them. And leadership is about empowering people so they can be successful in your absence. And a lot of leaders don't want to do that. Do you know why?
Because maybe it makes them unimportant.
And then
They don't feel needed. They don't feel needed, right?
they're
And they're like, why
dispensable.
am I, this person now knows how to do their job. They're performing well. So now
I'm no
what am I
longer
doing?
needed.
Right.
What am I going to, you know what? I need to build, I need this job. I need to build dependency. So they're dependent on me because now I have a job because they're dependent on me. And I never had that. I never had that mindset because I was confident in my ability to go and do that with other teams. So yeah, I'll fix this team and I'll go to that team because it's an approach that works with every team, and you just have to find what it is that gets them fired up and get them moving. So a lot of times leaders want the team to be dependent on them as part of self-preservation, but that's not leadership. That's self-serving.
Well, it's also not permanent. So what you described was this, you coached a woman who came to you who had a problem and who really was convinced in her mind that she wasn't able to move forward. You
Yeah,
placed the belief, and you also gave her a system, but
correct.
you didn't just lay it on her, your system that worked for you. Like, this is how I wrote my book.
Yeah,
You actually pulled it out of her by asking smart questions. And I
yeah.
think that's a key factor is leaders ask smart questions. They don't assume that the employee thinks the same way they do.
So I got two. I have 167, I think, maybe 168 testimonials and recommendations on LinkedIn from people that I've worked with, and I have two recent quotes from clients that I worked with, and both of them said exactly the same thing, which I thought was really neat. And I didn't know I was doing it, but when two people, one after the other, say you're doing it, that's the start of a pattern. And they said to me, you listen to what we don't say.
Oh, that is very powerful.
Yeah. I was like, wow, really? And she said, well, I never said this, but you came back and told me that this is what I was thinking. And I said, well, didn't you think that was obvious? She said, well, I wasn't saying it. I said, well, you were in a roundabout way. She said, yeah, but I never saw that. So you actually captured what it was I wasn't saying, but what and with this one lady, we've put up, she has now a system that she's going to talk about, which was everything she was talking, everything she said was around this, but she just wasn't saying it. And then when I called it out, and for me, it was like, in front of her, and it was there to use. But instead of picking up, she was walking around it, you know, and getting lost on the detail around. But once she saw it, it was like, oh my God, yeah, you're absolutely right. And now it's crystal clear. Now I have understanding. Now I can take things and move forward. And one of the other things, I did a TEDx talk. We spoke about this before. That I did a TEDx talk in French, and I did a talk called "My Little Secrets for Your Big Success." And one of the secrets was start small, set big goals, but start small. Because when you start small, all of those demons that tell you you can't do this, If you start small with something you know you can do, then you'll start to go and make progress. So when I decided I was going to run a marathon, everybody said to me, there's no way you're going to do that. You know, too fat, too old, too unfit. And I thought, well, I won't run a marathon then. I'll run for 15 minutes. I can do that. I know I can do that. And a lot of the time, what we just need to do is we just need to make a start. Because when we make that start, we've now made a commitment to the journey. And maybe I don't end up running a marathon. Maybe I only end up running a half or a 10K, but at least it's moved me forward. And once we get into forward progression, who knows what can happen? And if people say to me, well, yeah, that sounds nice, let me just remind you what we said at the start. 5 years ago, I had never written an article. 5 years ago, I would tell you I'm not a good writer. I'm now in the top 25 leadership experts in the world. How did that happen? It came by making a start. It started with one blog, and just by being persistent at doing that, and the more you do, the better you get at it. You might not become perfect, but you will get incremental improvements. And once you put that into place, you get a cumulative effect that can lead to really amazing results. So, you know, that's the other thing I want people to do when I'm coaching. Start small. Let's make a small change. Let's at least commit to the journey. And if you can show them how they can go from A to Z, then giving them those small steps, giving them a little bit of celebration, recognition for it will just build momentum. And again, boom, people start to make progress. And for me, that's what leadership is. And when we talk about coaching, I can do that in pretty much, you know, any field, because people intrinsically know what they need to do. They invariably know why they're failing. They just need some help to get past it. And as a mathematician, I'm great at solving problems. So sometimes I can actually help them with a solution that they don't have, or tease out of them the solution that they need to do, and then help them take small steps that show them it's working. And then once you've got that mindset, belief, plan, confidence, it has a transformative impact on results and performance.
Wow, that's very powerful, especially what you've been able to accomplish in the past 5 years with your articles. I'm wondering, to conclude, if there is one piece of advice that every leader should implement starting immediately, one little thing that they could do differently daily at work that would lead to eventually in the right direction.
So I'm going to give you two. So the first one is with employee engagement in the US at 32%, so 68% not engaged, and worldwide 85%. We have to do a better job of employee engagement. And 4 tips to engage people today, right now, no cost, no effort. Smile more, listen more, communicate more, praise more. If you just do those 4 things, smiling puts people at ease and makes them feel connected to you. Listening shows them respect, and you might learn something. Talk more, communicate, share the goal so that they understand what it is we're doing, and then give positive feedback. If you do that, that will improve their perception of you as a leader almost immediately. It is very, very simple. And then the second thing, so that's an easy thing to do.
Right, those 4 steps.
Now we get to the hard part, which is absolutely easy. It's just a question of willingness. And that is, every time something goes wrong, ask yourself, assume it went wrong because of you. Just take ownership of it.
Okay.
Whether it was or it wasn't. So, and the same, if you've got kids and they're doing something, you know, if they you know, color the walls in blue, whatever it is they do, or your team's not doing anything, ask yourself, okay, this is my fault. What did I do that allowed that to happen? What didn't I do that could have prevented it? And what can I do to fix and repair the situation. And when you take that mindset, your team will appreciate you so much more than you going out and saying, okay, where did this go wrong? Because if you take, because they're your team and you're in charge, so you are accountable. Sorry for that.
Right.
You actually take that on board and say, you know, what did I do wrong? What didn't I do? What could I do better that will prevent this? You will start to find things. And even if they are 100% to blame, you will still find things that when you think about it that way, that you could do better. And if you start to look and then act on those things, you'll become a better leader. You'll start to find areas for improvement for yourself, for your teams. It might be that you didn't give them clarity. It might be that you gave them too much freedom. You might not have given them the tools. I don't know what it is, but if you do that little bit of self-reflection and just assume it's my fault, what can I do better? You'll start to see significant improvements. And also it'll build a much stronger relationship with your team who already like you because you're smiling, listening, talking and praising them more already. This is then the cherry on top of that cake.
And that's such wonderful advice, because I think especially new managers who lack that leadership knowledge, they struggle with building relationships. They don't know how to be assertive and how to assert their position as the boss with while remaining friendly and smiling. And so it's such a fine balance, but that relationship is so key, right? People don't want to take orders from someone else.
Absolutely. So again, 2 tips right there. One of them is, don't tell people you're the boss. They know. And there's a great line in Game of Thrones where I forget what his name is.
No, Jon Snow?
No. The young guy that was king that died of, he was poisoned.
Oh my goodness, I forget
what his name is. But there's one scene where he screams, "I am the king," and his grandfather says, "Anybody who has to shout, 'I am the king,' is no king." And if you need to keep telling people you're in charge, then you're not in charge. People know. You don't need to remind them. You don't need to keep beating them with that. And then the second thing is, when you're in charge, ask people, could you do this? Don't tell them, do this. Say, could you do this? Because they know you're in charge. And when you say, could you do this? They know what you're telling them is, do this. But you're doing it in a way that is respectful. You're giving them, you're not giving them an option not to do it, but you're treating them in a way as if they're doing it as a benefit to you. And people will be much more inclined. And if I say to my wife, could you make me a cup of coffee? She'd be much more likely to do it if I say, oh, by the way, make me a coffee. Nobody wants to be commanded or directed. When I ask you, I'm giving you the opportunity to participate. And people love to do that. So stop telling people you're the boss. They know. And ask, don't command.
Another thing I've seen people do is reprimand in front of a group. So you're in a meeting and suddenly the boss puts someone on the spot and publicly says something about the quality of their presentation, interrupts them, treats them poorly, and that person is just mortified, and the room is mortified too, because they're like, he's in the hot seat. And I don't know if that's even repairable. Like, I'm even wondering how that's like almost a deadly sin, because the relationship is almost permanently damaged. It's very hard to recover after
and the relationship with who?
Between the boss and the employee. I've seen that happen in a room.
No. You're missing the bigger picture. Between the boss and the employees, you've damaged one individual, but when everybody sees that, they're immediately thinking, oh, I could be next.
Right.
So the way you treat one will be perceived as the way you'll treat everybody. So if you're If you're rude to one person, everybody just knows at some point you're going to be rude to me. You are labeled as rude. It's not, you know, Bob's a bad employee and he deserved it. They just look at what you did and think that's who you are. And that gets multiplied by every single person in the room and every single person outside the room that they tell. You're not going to believe what the boss just said to Maria about the quality of her performance. And that creates a toxic culture. And there is no comeback from a toxic culture. None. You are a toxic boss who creates toxic cultures.
You have just so much advice. I could keep you all day, but so how can people get in touch with you? So if you're doing a number of things, writing books and speaking internationally, and you're available for leadership coaching and trainings.
And exec coaching. I'm an exec coach. I also do consulting because I've worked in so many businesses. If people have got a business problem, I'm excellent at solving problems. So I've just worked with somebody now where they had a problem in their business. They wanted to look at to sell their business, and by working with them, and because what I'm really good at is asking questions and getting them to think about things and look at things, and also, you know, solving problems as well. So I do exec coaching and also consulting. If you've got a business that's struggling, give me a call. I can help you move it forward. And if people want to get hold of me, they can email me. I am the only Gordon Tredgold in the world. Bizarre, but true. So if they Google Gordon Tredgold, they will find me, and you can contact me via LinkedIn, via email, via the website, via Twitter. I'm very easy to find and accessible.
Yes, you are. You're very approachable, Gordon. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And I will talk to you about putting your contact info in the end of this so that people know exactly where to reach you. But there's only one of you, and you are gold. So thank you for being on my show today. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me.